He used camels to get it to a certain point, and then when the road got narrower, they took the tires off and stripped it even more and took it by, I think 7 or 8 people carried it across. And that's where he used to just like drive top down in the city, and whenever people used to come visit him, he used to like go to his locations on this. My name is Umer Hayat. I'm a classic car enthusiast. It's been a hobby since I was a kid. Like any other hobby, it starts off from childhood. Like my grandfather had an old Toyota Mark II. He used to let me steer the steering wheel when we were kids, and that's probably how my hobby started. Growing up, you don't have enough finances to get these, so my father was the one who helped us and enabled us to start our hobby by fixing his cars or driving his cars. And obviously, with time, we were able to get our own. It started with my father getting the Austin 8 parked to my left. It's 1938. Has a bit of history to it as well. This was owned by the Mayor of Chitral during the 1940s, I think. It was brought by a captain from Belgium in the 1940. And the Mayor, obviously at the time, Chitral did not have any roads, so he used camels to get it to a certain point, and then when the road got narrower, they took the tires off and stripped it even more and took it by, I think 7 or 8 people carried it across. And that's where he used to just like drive top down in the city, and whenever people used to come visit him, he used to like go to his locations on this. Unfortunately, he did not take care of it so well, and age obviously takes a toll on older cars. So they brought it to Peshawar, and that's where my father and his friend saw the car. It was parked in Peshawar and still not taken care of. And they asked the current mayor, not the current mayor, but the mayor during the time, to give us the car so we can restore it and basically let it be like let the history be restored of it. It took about 10 years for him to sort out. It has its original engine. It still has its original import papers from Belgium and everything. So we've tried to keep the history as intact as we could. And obviously during the 10 years, I had the chance of also sorting it out with him as well. So kind of I have a workshop that kind of eventually popped up out of nowhere because the amount of tools used to collect to fix it. When you start the car, you have to pump the accelerator a few times to let the fuel flood into the carburetor, and sometimes it has a mechanical fuel pump, so it goes click, 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 and then when you know it stops clicking, you know, okay, the fuel's in the car now. And slowly with time, my father and me, we were able to find the Opel Rekord behind us. It's a 1960. It's a steering shift, again, one of the unique things you don't have in cars these days. And it's also, again, we had a lot of people who had the same hobby, same interest in cars, that were able to find these cars for us and help us restore them as well. The Land Rover is then another story. It was passed down from multiple people, and eventually when it came to us, it did have a lot of work that needed to be done because the people before it did not treat it as a classic but like a normal car. And but the main thing is, like, not only does the hobby help you collect the cars, something that you are passionate about, it helps you find a lot of communities which we didn't think existed in Pakistan, and I've made like lifelong friends from it as well. Like, they have the same interests. We might not like the same cars, but the passion is the same. And similarly, I've learned a lot from them, and I've used what I've learned into my cars as well. I have a passion for bikes as well. I have a GS1150. It's a Suzuki, and it's an old Japanese bike, and it's pretty heavy considering it almost weighs as much as a small car. I have a Enduro as well, a Yamaha Enduro. I started off in college because bikes are the only things we could afford at the time. It's just like cars were just way out of our budget. And my father, obviously I used to help him with his cars, but obviously those were his cars, so I needed to get something of my own to start my collection, or something that's I could say is mine. Started off with a 1976 Enduro Yamaha. The engine was seized, it was rusted, it was the tires were just completely torn. I don't know what the person did with it, but obviously for me it was like I've struck gold or something. Got it, fixed it. It still needs fixing. Like there are times like when I try to start it, normally just something would go wrong with it. But then again, but then once it gets started, like the sound of it is just very different as compared to your normal bikes. It's just like the ride is different, the feel is different. The best part is when you start it, you can smell the petrol and the exhaust fumes and everything. It's a different sensation from your normal bikes. Similarly, the GS that I have now, I tried to move up, obviously trying to get my my direction towards the older Japanese superbikes. You could call this the Hayabusa of the old Japanese ages, I guess. It's a very heavy bike. It's like I'm lucky because I've got long legs, so I can touch with my toes. But it's a difficult bike to ride. But then again, the sensation of it is just way different. Like the design of it, the front lights, circular lights, it's like protruding from the outside. It's just like the aesthetics of it is just way different as compared to your normal bikes. The other thing is, like, bikes in Pakistan are not that common either. Like this is probably, I think, the only GS1150 in all of Pakistan. So finding parts is very tough. We have a few people in Karachi. A friend of mine actually restored this bike. So there are people who can fix it, but obviously because there are very few of them, there's not many people. Once it breaks down, you have to think about where I'm going to source parts from. So one of the cars I have, which is currently a E21, it's a BMW 1982 coupe. It's got a sunroof, and I think it's the only one in Pakistan that has a sunroof, and it's a left-hand drive because it came from Kuwait. A doctor there was posted, and when some issues came up and he had to come back to Pakistan, so he got it over the border. Part of the reason why it's a left-hand drive. So in itself, it's quite unique. It's got a six-cylinder engine inside of it, but I've kept it for about 6 years. I got it off someone in Islamabad. Pretty much a daily driver for me as well. I take it to my work. And all it requires is just regular oil change, and you just make sure you don't run on empty. But other than that, I have a Fiat 600. That is currently a project that has been a project for the past 8 years. But eventually, like I said, once I get the other ones completely sorted is when I'll start worrying about ones that are not ready. I have a mini Rover. It's a 1991. The only difference in the minis is that the newer ones have newer engines. The chassis and the body is pretty much the same. That is again one of the I was lucky to find it, because mini again in Pakistan are very few, and with the current issues with imports that you can't bring classics in, it's just the prices are just getting really ridiculous. In a way, it's bad because we are lucky enough to have the ability to buy these cars and fix them, but more importantly to be able to find them and buy them. But the issue is, like, with other people who are younger than us and did not have the opportunity to buy these, they obviously have to either import them or buy them off someone for a ridiculous price. Imports are not happening anytime soon, because we've had some of our friends try for an SRO which allowed cars to be imported of a certain period of time. I think in the 1960, anything later than 1967 or something could be imported. So that was an opportunity for people to bring cars in and, like, expand the classic car scene in Pakistan. But obviously the government did not think of that as a priority at the moment. So we're hoping sometime in the future they do accept the terms and conditions and allow us to get classic cars into Pakistan.